Thankfully, most of you didn't watch this game, especially if you're on the West Coast, because it was on super early in Germany. Did you guys see that stadium and how the roof was? It was like the Chargers roof, right, where it was like a thin, some sort of fiber covering, and then they pressed a button and it all kind of gathered up, almost like one of those pop-up tents, that you have at soccer games or down at the beach, and then it all went into the scoreboard. Did you see that, Jay Stu, over the weekend? Dan, did you guys see this?
Yeah, I saw the video. Pretty cool.
Very cool, except for the fact that the scoreboard is like all these Americans, and they go like, man, how you can't even see that scoreboard? That's not like it. We like our scoreboards big, big. That game was awful. Colts, Patriots, bad football. Colts win, and here's Bill Belichick summing up the loss.
Similar theme that we've had at other games this year, just too many missed opportunities, and in all three phases of the game. So just got to play better situational football and do a better job taking advantage of the opportunities that we have.
Bill, do you still have faith with Mac Jones as your quarterback?
I have faith in all our players.
So he also played Blake Zappi down at the end of the game, and then they had the fake spike play that ends up being a complete mess. Here's Mac Jones on his performance.
We're not there yet, but I always use the bye week to evaluate myself and the team and everything I can do better. And there's a lot of things clearly I need to do better, and I'm always going to work. I know that.
After the first drive in the third quarter, Bill O'Brien looked pretty animated on the sideline. What was he trying to communicate to you in that moment?
Yeah, just try to go through my reads and hit the open guy. I got to do a better job of that. And it's really hard, out there in the NFL. It's really good defense, but there was a lot of open guys out there that I could have hit.
So, obviously, he's taking one for the team, saying, hey, it's on me. I could have hit open guys. That team's not very good. It's a mess. They need a new quarterback. And last week we had Ben Bolin on, and he said this is going to be Belichick's last year, which, he had reported there's a chance Belichick gets fired if they lose. Here we are at Monday. He hadn't gotten fired, so he's not getting fired. But my follow-up to him was, well, if you're going to fire him if they lose, eventually you're going to fire him. He's like, yeah, that's what's going to happen. And, of course, that was widely reported over the weekend. This is rock bottom. When Belichick can no longer win close games of against like-talented teams, that's rock bottom. Now, personally, I do think he's earned the chance to rebuild out of it. That would be me. You win for me for 20 years. I would make make changes in the player personnel, but maybe that's a Wall issue. But this team they just don't have dudes other people have. They don't fly around, and it's a lack of adjustment to the fact that they've been a slow defense for 4 or 5 years, and it hasn't gotten better. And they spent a bunch of money. They got a new quarterback. They've tried different coordinators. None of it's worked. Dan, I know you watched that game because you have your afternoon show yesterday on Fox Sports Radio. Give me your thoughts on the Patriots situation.
Well, yeah, I think I am in lockstep with you on. I believe that Bill Belichick deserves the right to see this through. I just have also realized in talking out of both sides of my mouth that is probably not realistic. And it kind of is not too dissimilar to the Cowboys situation where Jerry Jones is so eager to win a Super Bowl, right? Bob Kraft is the same way. Now, Bob Kraft may not have a reason considering the success that they've had, but the guy's 82 years old. And the problem that I see, Doug, because I believe that Belichick should have the opportunity to try to take this team, see it through with a likely high draft pick, maybe even a ability to draft a franchise quarterback at that point. I mean, Mac Jones was, 15th overall? That's not necessarily considered franchise quarterbacks, even though quarterbacks have been drafted later. It's the point of if it doesn't work with the new quarterback. And that's the part where I think if you're Robert Kraft is you almost can't allow Belichick to see this through because then these next couple of years would be wasted. If you drafted a quarterback and it didn't work out, and you kept Bill around, say, in 2024, now you bring a new person in, well, that new person may not want to be may not want that guy as their quarterback. And now you're going into musical chairs, and it's the timing of everything. It's just a crazy situation to think that this is how it could end for Bill Belichick. But I think timing of everything is probably the reason it's going to end at the end of the year.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Look, I think, quarterback play is so important. And, everybody talks about Brady, and I've talked about how Brady was an elite quarterback, and yet he wasn't taking elite money. I think that's part of it. There's a leadership component to it. When you have confidence in one guy, you don't have to coach as much. They do a lot of the coaching, a lot of the little things for you. When you don't have that guy at quarterback, it changes the entire dynamic of your franchise. And there's reasons for there's other reasons. I still think their defense has just not gotten faster, and the more you put a lack of speed on the field, you're going to get exposed, and they have. But let's welcome in Rich Hornberger. He joins us on the Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. How'd the Patriots get to this point?
Well, it's been a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but I think you really pointed to the biggest and most obvious reason is they don't have elite quarterback play anymore. And in this league, and this has really been this way for a long time, this isn't anything new. In this league, if you don't have a great quarterback, or at very least a very serviceable quarterback, you can't play. You just can't play. Think about how many games this weekend alone the quarterback bailed out the team. Second half, Browns, Deshaun Watson lights it up for a half, saves the day for the Browns, beats the Baltimore Ravens. On paper, there's no way I could have seen a way that Cleveland left Baltimore with a W. And Deshaun Watson changed the game in the second half for the Browns. Jared Goff, his play against the Los Angeles Chargers last night. Okay, C.J. Stroud. Joe Burrow. Actually, they were trading turns being the hero of the moment in the Bengals Houston game yesterday. This is what it takes in this league to win, and it's not new. This is the reason why Jimmy Johnson needed Troy Aikman and why Bill Walsh needed Montana and then Young. This is why Bill Belichick needed Tom Brady. This is why Andy Reid needed McNabb and Alex Smith and then Patrick Mahomes. You need, at very least, a very serviceable quarterback, if not a great quarterback, to do anything in this league. And the New England Patriots do not have that. Mac Jones is not the answer.
So what do you think? It appears that Belichick is done, right? It appears that way. Do you see any way otherwise?
Okay, yeah, I guess I could make the argument that if somehow the Patriots rack off a couple of wins to finish this season, because remember, all the alarm bells are ringing. I don't think he's going to be fired mid-season. But say they go on, I don't know, what's even possible at this point, 5-2 to finish the season, maybe. They've lost some close games. Their record could be very different if they won some of those close games. So say something magical happens, and this ends up being a 7-win season for the Patriots. 7-10, I'm not saying justifies a whole lot in terms of needing to keep Bill Belichick. But does it at least become a conversation? Maybe. But most likely you're right, Doug. Most likely this is going to be an amicable divorce, or as amicable as a divorce can be. And I don't think Bill's done coaching. And in fact, I think there's going to be some teams out there, like the Broncos, were looking for a coach after Nathaniel Hackett really got off to an awful start with Russell Wilson in Denver. There's going to be teams like the Denver Broncos who have what they deem a talented quarterback, and they're looking for a culture builder as a head coach to man the front of the team. And so the Denver Broncos hired Sean Payton. If the Chargers move on from Brandon Staley and Bill Belichick has an opportunity to come out to L.A. and coach Justin Herbert, that makes a whole lot of sense. There's going to be situations at the end of the season where there's going to be franchises with capable quarterbacks looking for a new head coach, and Bill Belichick, I would imagine, will still be interested in coaching.
Okay, so you got to the Chargers. Rich Hornberger hosts a morning show in San Diego on our San Diego affiliate, Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. How have they gotten this bad defensively?
Man, if it's not one thing, it's another. Last year, they made some. They had some injuries. You know, Bosa was injured for a stretch. Derwin James has spent a lot of time injured since he's been drafted. J.C. Jackson, that contract was an albatross basically from the moment they signed it last offseason. They had terrible linebacking play last season. I mean, they've just, like I said, it's just if it hasn't been one thing, it's another. And this season, it just seems out of sync. I mean, it just seems like, you know, teams have really diagnosed their weaknesses and they're not correcting, they're not making adjustments in games. So a team comes out in the first half and lights it up. You would assume, okay, well, Brandon Staley, talented defensive coordinator from the Los Angeles Rams, that was the reason why, you know, he was able to lure the Chargers into giving him a head coaching job. He's not a great adjuster at halftime. So, the Detroit Lions ran out to that lead, and even though they fought back in that game, I was like, well, what's stopping Detroit from converting fourth downs? What's stopping Detroit from scoring? The answer is just about nothing. You know, this team, they baffle me with some of the decisions that they make in key circumstances, you know, and it continues to haunt Brandon Staley, and it's kind of a broken record. He gets to the podium after every game. He goes, hey, you know, we didn't rush the passer good enough. And it's like, well, you have Khalil Mack and you have Joey Bosa. How is that possible? There's something wrong with the system. And he goes, well, we didn't stop the run well enough. And you say, yeah, well, you have a box safety like Derwin James, who's healthy for the first time in his career, who's a willing tackler and an aggressive tackler against the run. How is that happening? I mean, so he's taking all the accountability, which I appreciate and I think is great. But the problem is he's not correcting those mistakes, whether it be at halftime or week to week in between these games.
Rich Orenberger joining us here on the Doug Gottlieb Show on Fox Sports Radio, coming to you from the TireRack.com studios. Okay, so I'm fascinated by what happened. Okay, what happened with the Baltimore Ravens? They were completely dominating that game, and the Bengals looked, obviously, the Browns looked like a mess. Browns come back and win. What happened?
Really what it came down to was the tale of two halves for Deshaun Watson. I mean, I think he completed 6 of 20 passes in the first half. And if I'm not mistaken, he went a perfect 14 for 14 in the second half. I mean, it wasn't all perfect, but Deshaun Watson, if this is a sampling of what's to come, if he can stay healthy and deliver those type of performances, he's going to earn that $230 million contract, fully guaranteed, that the Browns gave him 2 years ago. But that's the first really consistent half of football we've seen from Deshaun Watson. You know, this stems back to the earlier conversation about needing a guy. Well, the Cleveland Browns were so desperate to getting a guy at quarterback that they were willing to really break all the rules, like the sort of, you know, I don't know if we want to call it, but the unwritten rules with the owners, like guaranteeing all that money to this quarterback, especially considering some of the allegations coming out against him during that time, and the amount that they traded for him. I mean, it just blew up the market in every way possible from a salary standpoint and a draft capital standpoint when you're trading for quarterbacks. But they didn't care because they were so desperate to have what I say, like, you either need a very serviceable or a great quarterback to even have a chance in this league. So they went full in. They anteed up. And last year, you can make all the excuses you want with him knocking off some of the rest and the distractions from his self-imposed issues off the field with the sexual misconduct. But then this season, there's no more excuses left. I mean, he's proven to be fragile, indurable, whatever you want to call that. And also, he hasn't played all that well. So this is the first time we've seen anything that resembled Houston Texans Deshaun Watson. And that's what a special quarterback can do to an offense, can do to a football team. He can lift the football team. You're not going to get that performance from DTR. You're not going to get that performance from P.J. Walker. The only player on that roster who can perform like that is Deshaun Watson, but he's got to do it consistently for the Browns to really have a chance this season. Otherwise, I mean, they're hanging in there because of that defense at 6-3, especially after that win against the Ravens. But they need more consistency out of that quarterback position, and that's the first half where he really put it all together.
Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. That's the voice of Rich Ornberger. He's joining us here. Okay. Aaron Rodgers is targeting a mid-December return. Will it matter for the Jets?
Oh, it absolutely will. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is the type of player who, if he gets back on the field, okay, the quarterback play is so poor in New York right now that the fact that they have a 4-5 record is nothing short of a miracle. And Robert Saleh, and you're not going to hear a lot of people say this around New York, but he deserves to be in the conversation just keeping this team near 500 with Zach Wilson. I mean, this offense stinks out loud with him. He looks lost. He doesn't look comfortable in this offense at all. I mean, maybe it's Nathaniel Hackett's fault to a greater or lesser extent. Maybe they need to simplify it further. I mean, I'm not in the room, so I don't know what Zach Wilson knows, and I don't know exactly how it's being taught either. But there were struggles with Russell Wilson. So, if you're a good offensive coordinator, you need to make adjustments based on which quarterback you're working with. For whatever reason, Nathaniel Hackett, he can get MVP performances out of Aaron Rodgers, but nobody else. So when Aaron Rodgers gets back, if the Jets are still even hinting at being in the playoff picture or, one of those bubble teams, it could change their fortunes through the end of the season and then potentially during a playoff run because he's that special of a quarterback. He's a game-changing quarterback.
Yes, he is. I just don't. All right, what about the Raiders? They've won 2 games, since the coaching change. Is this the guy for the job?
Say that one more time, Doug. I lost you a little bit.
I said, you have 2 games with an interim head coach who he doesn't come in with offense. He comes in with defense, with energy. What do you think the Raiders do in regards to their coaching situation?
Well, they made a big mistake moving on from Rich Bisaccia 2 years ago when they elected to hire Josh McDaniels. That locker room fell in love with his energy, his enthusiasm, doing it kind of the Raider way. He was a great delegator of responsibility, truly a CEO, head coach. He was running the show from the outside, but internally, he was allowing his coordinators to work with their side of the ball, and he was just the glue guy. And that's an important role for a head coach, is to understand where you stand with the offense, with the defense, with the team, and really sort of be more of a director, set the theme of the film as opposed to get involved with the editing and, get involved with every single shot. Like, you hire videographers on a movie set for stuff like that, right? You hire cinematographers, you hire editors. You have to have trust in the people around you. I think that Bisaccia was doing a nice job of that, and they got rid of him, and they brought in a micromanager. They brought in Josh McDaniels, who I think had his hand in everything and couldn't keep control of the franchise from several different aspects. You heard players coming out publicly saying, it feels like football again. It doesn't feel like we're walking on eggshells. And this team has a completely different energy now with Antonio Pierce at the helm. I'm a believer in that. I think that you have to read the room. You have to take the pulse of a locker room and realize, sometimes it may not be the perfect candidate for the job, and maybe you can help mold that candidate into becoming what you need him to be, or maybe a little bit of outside-the-box thinking can net you a championship one day. I mean, it worked for the Lakers. I remember when Rob Pelinka was signed as the general manager as a sports agent. He had to divest from his sports agency to become the GM. Well, a couple of years later, granted, it was in Orlando in a bubble, but it netted the Lakers a championship, thinking outside the box with the GM. I mean, how ridiculous is it that a guy who was on nobody's radar but is a football man, has spent his entire life in this game, and was elevated from a linebacker coach to a head coaching position can lead you to playoff runs or potentially championships? It's not completely ridiculous to imagine that scenario, especially the way the Raiders are playing, and then especially with a 500 record. They've really course-corrected here.
Rich Hornberger, former NFL lineman, played his college football at Penn State. He's a host of Fox Sports Radio Weekends and hosting the Daily Show in our San Diego affiliate. He's literally on air 7 days a week, talking a ton of what he knows, which is football. Rich, you're the best, man. Appreciate you.
Doug, anytime, my friend. We'll do it again.